Welcome to Visibility with Purpose. My name is Sigrid de Kast. I'm a global online networking and visibility strategist.
And I'm Lynnaire Johnston, Executive Visibility Specialist. Each week, the two of us explore what it actually takes for senior professionals to become visible, recognised, and trusted online.
Today, we're going to talk about how senior professionals build visibility without chasing attention. And if you've been wondering why your visibility has not yet created the attention you'd like it to, you are in exactly the right place.
And here's where I'd like to start on this one today, Sigrid, and that is visibility and attention chasing are different games. So my perspective on this is that attention chasing optimizes for strangers and for volume. So we're talking about hooks, hot takes, posting daily, and all those kind of vanity ideas. But visibility for senior professionals means being known by the right people, the right 200 people, not noticed by 2,000. So naming this distinction, this difference early on in our discussion, I think is going to be important. So are you seeing these as two different things as well?
I do, Lynnaire. And I think the key component here is that the focus with so many social media people, advisors, and so on, they do go much more into that area of chasing attention. So they give you all these tips and tools and what to do to get attention. But ultimately, it just doesn't convert in the way for senior professionals or others in the areas of wanting to and needing to be visible for what they offer, for the expertise they have. It is a whole different game, I think. You want to think about it in a way where being visible means that you've got to also create this component of trust and credibility as part of it. Would you agree?
I would, absolutely. And I think the credibility side of it is very important. And when you are chasing attention, credibility tends to slide down the scale and disappear because it's not about those vanity metrics. It's not about reach. It's not about engagement. It's about being visible to the right people and being credible while you're doing that. So in the past, I think we've seen a lot of posts and a lot of content that was simply designed to make people want to clickbaitable content. And there's no question now that, particularly on LinkedIn, and I'm guessing online generally, that if you are chasing that kind of content, then you are going for the wrong audience, because now we are looking at both a human and an AI audience. And I've been saying this quite a lot recently, that LinkedIn is one of the most highly cited sources of answers to questions that are asked by or to AI by people wanting to know answers to business questions. And I think it's important to recognize that LinkedIn has a big role to play in this. And so the content that we put on LinkedIn is really important from that perspective.
I think what some people that I have heard or that I've spoken to, what they're questioning is why do certain posts are more visible, and by that they mean they have loads of comments on them and they seem to be promoted in their feed and they don't really know why. I mean, that is the sort of thing you just said is not really the way to go, because it doesn't translate into this getting to really know people. You've mentioned before the number of, having about 200 valuable, as I would say, valuable connections, so that you can really work with your network. And I have an example here just from today. Somebody I'm actually connected with since 2012, he told me. We haven't been interacting in any way. So the question is, are we really visible to each other? No, we haven't been. Is it important? Well, that depends now on what he does, who he is, and whether we have things that we might like to explore further. So it really does mean, if you are wanting to build real visibility, visibility that makes a difference both to the others that you want to be visible to and to yourself, you've also got to interact with the people on a fairly regular basis in some way, even if it is, commenting on their posts, for example. Does that play in your thinking as well?
Yes, it does. And we're talking about two different kinds of visibility here, Sigrid, I think, because we've got the visibility around content, which of course is out of our hands largely now. And there's no question that reach is just getting lower and lower all the time. But the kind of visibility you're describing here is in direct messaging with people. And that's what people are going to remember. If you've had a conversation with somebody, if you sent them a voice note, or you've sent them a video through direct messaging on LinkedIn, people are going to remember that much more than if you commented on one of their posts. So that, of course, is where the relationship building side of it comes in. And you and I both know that we do business with people we know, like, and trust. So if you're building relationships with people through those DMs, then that gives you the kind of visibility that I think really works. And in this world where content has changed in terms of what we want from it, because we're not looking for vanity metrics from it any longer, for visibility on LinkedIn, we're looking at it to be found by AI. And so we need to be putting more effort, I think, into building those relationships through those direct messages that you are talking about. And to me, that is how you become findable rather than loud, because of course a lot of people, as you've said, are quite loud on LinkedIn. They've got all this kind of attention, and I don't think that's where senior leaders shine. I think where they shine is that they want to have, or they need to have, a sharp LinkedIn profile with everything on there that states clearly what it is that they do and their points of view, and they need a couple of really definitive pieces that come up when their name gets searched. Now, that's not all about getting lots of reach. That's about being findable, and being discoverable, and then being cited by AI as a good source or an expert in the field. So I think that the direct messaging really feeds into that, Sigrid. And as you and I know, relationships is what LinkedIn is all about. People think it's all about content, but I think, and I know you do, that it's all about relationships.
It absolutely is. And yes, you're right. The messaging is one part of it. So to really have senior professionals in particularly, also coaches, consultants, building that visibility without chasing attention. One part, of course, from my perspective also is that networking, that they do network. And I think senior professionals like to be in rooms with others of their kind or their type. I would expand that. I would say, look, walk into a room where it's not necessarily about your industry and expand, explore other opportunities. But a bigger component too, Lynnaire, you talked about LinkedIn profile, for example. I just want to tap back into that one for a moment. What's the impact, or not so much impact, by also putting in the featured section something valuable for a senior professional? Is that a component that will contribute to their visibility, to building their visibility?
Certainly to human visibility, absolutely, because the word featured really says it all. And your best work should go into your featured section, whether that's an article, whether that's a podcast you've been a guest on, or something else entirely. The featured section is a really good place to put that. Now, whether the AI sees that distinctly from, say, an article that is findable through SEO and through Google, it's really really unclear at this point. But what the AI on LinkedIn is doing is pulling things from all over your LinkedIn presence. So that's pulling things from your profile, from your posting, from your engagement, and from your messaging. All of those feed into the algorithm to tell it who to send your content to for the visibility out there. Now, my personal view is, and let's face it, I'm a professional writer by trade, my view is that you should also have some long form content on your LinkedIn profile. And when I say on your profile, I mean published articles, published newsletters, because those feed into the activity section of your profile, which then is visible, of course, to AI. So I think that that is a really important aspect of this. But I would like to also mention, Sigrid, that it's not only what happens on LinkedIn that's important. It's also important that we're visible off the platform and in other places. So, for example, if a senior leader is invited to be a guest on a podcast, that is excellent visibility. If that podcast happens to be on Spotify or on YouTube, then that's also going to help make them more visible. So I think that using other people's stages, if you like, instead of building their own all the time is a really important thing to do, because senior leaders don't have their own blogs generally, they don't have their own YouTube channels often, and so being seen and visible on other people's stages I think is a really useful thing for them to do, and that can include by being in the media, and articles, quoted in articles, joining panels at conferences and events, that kind of thing. So that's a wider view of visibility that doesn't chase attention, but does in fact get people to be seen by humans as well as AI.
2 points I want us to move towards concluding this on for today. Point number 1, I call that visibility through others, and that is part of the actual networking system at the heart of my visible networking component. So visibility through others is what you've just beautifully described, and I'll pick up on that because that is so good. I can put that into my content, for example. And the other point I just want to make for today is you've mentioned AI several times. We're all aware of it. There is always, this component. Why should I write for AI? No, I want to write for people. I'm not going into that one. I just wonder, what is your feel on how important is it? And we're talking generally for the audience that does networking, and in specifically for the senior leaders. Is AI percentage-wise, do you want to express it in that way, or how would you describe the value and the importance of being aware for your visibility on AI?
I think it's too early to put numbers on it, Sigrid, because there's so much is so up in the air and it's changing so quickly. What I can say is that AI is becoming more important in terms of our visibility at the same time as LinkedIn is kind of becoming less important to humans, because humans are not seeing our content on LinkedIn. And that's going to have other ramifications that are outside the scope of this conversation. But what I think is going to happen is that people are still going to need to post on LinkedIn if they want to be visible by AI. And that comes back to the fact that there are so many citations from LinkedIn in answers to questions asked of AI, and it's hard to get around that one. So do you know how I would describe this? As a catch-22. So our visibility is going down to humans on the platform, but I think it's going up to AI. No numbers. I think it's way too early for us to know about that yet.
I think you're absolutely correct there, that everything is still in this moving, swaying, changing mode at this point in time. But I think we've made quite a few important points in our discussion, in our conversation today. And so let us conclude on that one and say that if today's episode gave you, the viewer, one thing to think about or try, we would love to hear about it in the comments.
And if you found this useful, please share it with a colleague who's navigating the same questions about visibility. That's exactly the kind of networking that builds recognition.
Now, next week, we'll be talking about why your network matters more than your content.
Use the links in the description below to connect with Sigrid and I on LinkedIn and to find out more about how we can help you become more visible online.
Be visible, be valuable, be remembered.